Welcome to this week's episode of Jonathan on Money. This is episode number 126. So, this episode is going to start on a more somber note, but it's important to mention. As everyone knows, the conservative activist Charlie Kirk was assassinated last week. He was engaging in a debate with a college student in Utah and was shot in the middle of that discussion, and he sadly passed away. I bring this episode up for a few reasons that I'll tie back into personal finance, but they're important for life in general. And the first is I want to emphasize the importance of respectful dialogue. Politics is a very divisive subject, but people can get worked up about any topic. This includes personal finance. Remember, there's very rarely just one right way of doing things, and as an investor, hearing and learning from various perspectives can help form what strategy makes the most sense for you. It's important to embrace dialogue in all aspects of life, and this also includes with your money and investing. And the second point is that the other lesson from this tragic event is the fact that no one knows what the future holds. More specifically, you don't know when you'll pass away or what events will shape your life. The events, and this teaches us to embrace and live in the moment. On the financial side, it teaches us that we should plan ahead, get the various insurances in place like life, disability, and long term care. Also, get your will and estate planning documents in order. While the future may be unknown for the negative events that we see occur, may also be unknown for the positive things that happen, like a long life. This is why you need to save money for your future as well. At the end of the day, regardless of Charlie's professional accomplishments, which were absolutely staggering at his young age, it's horrific to see a 31-year-old father and husband with two little kids get killed in cold blood. Hopefully, listeners can take time to reflect on life and what is actually important to them and make sure to align their money and their time to pursue and support these personal goals. Shifting gears, my upcoming fall live webinars will continue on October 16th at 8:30 a.m. on Structuring Buy-Sell Agreements Right, What Advisors and Owners Need to Know, featuring Jack Elder, head of CBS Advanced Sales at Comprehensive Brokerage Services, and I'll be sure to include the registration information in the show notes to this episode. Okay, now for today's agenda. My talking points this week will discuss a question I received on the challenge of making $400,000 a year and just getting by. Our quote this week is about giving while you're alive rather than at death. I'll spend the last half of the episode answering listener questions, including rationalizing the cost of traveling to Baha Mar on vacation. And finally, we're going to end with an actionable idea to implement your investing life, where we'll discuss how to have an impact with your portfolio by excluding exposure to countries that have a history of poor human rights. With that, let's jump into this week's talking points. So, I recently received the following question, which read as follows. My wife and I are just getting by and can't understand why. We're both professionals and bring in about $400,000 a year in household income. We send our six kids to yeshiva. We own our home, which has a mortgage, save a modest amount of money for retirement, only go to Miami once a year where we stay at my in law's apartment. Beyond that, we quite literally don't have any more wiggle room. What are we doing wrong? And for context, this question was sent in from Long Island, New York. So this question may seem absurd for folks outside the New York, Los Angeles areas. After all, an annual income of $400,000 a year puts you in the top 5% of the country. However, high cost of living areas can make even relatively high earners feel like they're struggling. This challenge is amplified for frum families who have the added expenses associated with an Orthodox lifestyle. Allow me to address your question, or this question, by offering some perspective combined with several suggestions to consider. First is some perspective. The lifestyle you're describing is not just getting by. You're living a relatively luxurious lifestyle compared to most people and can afford way more than just the basics. First, and most importantly, you are likely spending well into the six figures to give your kids a yeshiva education, which is priceless. You live in one of the highest cost of living areas in the world, with all the kosher and Jewish amenities easily and readily accessible, and don't seem to be stressed about putting food on the table. You vacation in a tropical climate destination once a year and save money for your future. While you would like more discretionary cash flow, you're describing a lifestyle that is enviable to many. In short, you're living the dream. Now that we've established that you are in fact living comfortably, the crux of your question is really how to free up cash flow that you don't feel that you're struggling to get by. And here are a few suggestions that may help alleviate these feelings. You should start by reviewing every monthly expense. This is a super boring suggestion that may get many listeners to roll their eyes, but doing an audit of all your expenses is the first and most important step to giving you some financial breathing room. Find the expenses that you can cut or look for areas where you can be more intentional about where you spend your money. The memberships you don't use, the conveniences that are too frequent or costly should be cut or minimized. Saving a few $100s a month will lead to thousands of dollars a year, which can either be saved or used to do something that will spark joy in your life and relieve your financial tension. Remember, small changes in a monthly budget can have a significant impact. Next, you should consider cheaper schools. You mentioned that you say that you're sending 6 kids to yeshiva, which is undoubtedly a hefty annual expense. Thankfully, you live in Long Island, which means you have many yeshiva options available to you. I don't know where your children currently go to school or how much you're paying in tuition, but with some yeshiva schools costing upwards of $30,000 a year, it doesn't take brilliant financial wizardry to realize that you can save a lot of money by sending your kids to a cheaper school. Keep in mind you can even explore traveling to other parts of the state to find cheaper options. While commuting an additional 45 minutes is unpleasant for your kids and an occasional inconvenience for you, it can save tens of thousands of dollars a year that you can redirect to other areas of your life. Switching yeshivas is a significant life decision. It will be disruptive, and another school may have a different style, hashkafa, or other attributes that don't make it your first choice. However, tough choices need to be made to address your predicament. Another consideration is part-time work. An additional $5,000 to $10,000 annually may be all the difference you need to not feel pinched financially. This additional income could be earned by working overtime, doing something tangentially related to your field, or swallowing your pride and doing something in the evening or on the weekend that you are overqualified for but can give you the extra cash flow that you need. A physician I work with recently told me that he started doing expert witness work to earn an additional $50,000 to $100,000 a year so they can buy an apartment in Israel before he retires. Similarly, a business owner who has a relatively high household income decided to drive an Uber during his downtime to justify taking his family away for Pesach this year. That's a lot of Uber rides. There's no shortage of opportunities available to those who are motivated and willing to work. Another point to bring up is just planning for the future. As the kids move off your payroll and hopefully become financially independent, you could direct half of that additional saving towards your financial future and the other half to spend on discretionary items to enhance your life. This approach involves sticking it out in your current situation for at least a few more years. However, understanding that you have more financial breathing room on the horizon may be psychologically helpful. And here's a final thought. Remember, your harshest critic is usually yourself. You may feel that you're running on a treadmill and not making any progress, but if no one else tells you this, allow me to be the first. You're doing a good job. While I don't know you personally or professionally, your question indicates that you're getting the big picture decisions correct. You appear to be serious about educating your children with Torah values that will allow them to be a valuable member of a Jewish community and society at large. You also make an effort to take time off as a family while also saving regularly for your future. I imagine that many listeners have similar feelings of overwhelm from time to time. This may be due to financial concerns, perhaps it's related to family or community obligations. It's probably all three. Whenever I'm feeling overwhelmed, question myself, or feel like I'm just going through the motions, I find it helpful to pause and make sure that I'm getting the big life and financial decisions correct. While there's always room for self improvement, the ability to get the big things right in life is what ultimately matters. It will lead to success personally, professionally, and with your finances. Okay, those are the talking points this week. And as a reminder, you can be notified of all my recent articles, webinars, and all the work I put out by subscribing to my free monthly newsletter at parkbridgewealth.com/newsletter. Okay, this week's quote is something I have heard, but I'm not sure who originally said it. It is as follows: It's better to give with a warm hand than a cold one. This phrase is basically a poetic way of saying, give while you're alive, not after you're gone. Why is this the case? I'm glad you asked. Giving while you're alive is fulfilling and beneficial for several reasons, such as it allows you to witness and influence the impact of your generosity rather than waiting to pass on assets after your death. Giving while alive ensures their wealth is used as you intended, brings personal satisfaction, and provides timely support to recipients. Practically, from my own day to day experience working with multi generational families, oftentimes the younger generations are struggling to gain their financial footing and get established in life. A gift while they're young and in your lifetime may be far more impactful than waiting until you're dead and they are much older and already established. Especially during this time of year, which is the high holidays season for Jews around the world, it's worth reflecting on your own giving and determine not only how much you should give and who to give to, but also when you should give to various loved ones and charities to maximize the impact of your generosity. Okay, now let's jump into this week's financial questions. And if you do have a question, feel free to submit it to me and it may be answered in a future episode. Okay, first question. Given all the hatred around the world for Jews, how would you recommend combating this hate using my money to benefit Israel? And I've addressed this before, but it is certainly worth reviewing again. So you can use your money to benefit Israel in a variety of ways. Here are just a few. One, you can invest in Israeli debt by purchasing Israel bonds. One method of investing in Israel is by purchasing bonds from Israel. Fundamentally, bonds are a way for an investor to lend money to an entity, as a company, municipality, or country, to invest in their infrastructure. In return for the privilege of borrowing your money for a set time frame, that entity will pay you interest. The best way to buy Israeli bonds is by going to the Israel Bonds website. Please speak to your financial advisor to ensure it makes sense for you. Two, you can invest in Israeli companies. The best way to invest in Israeli companies is through publicly traded stocks. This can be done by purchasing individual stocks of Israeli based companies or by utilizing a mutual fund or exchange traded fund that buy those companies on your behalf. There are a myriad of fund companies that provide these products, including BlackRock, Van Eck, ARK, and Blue Star. As with the purchase of Israeli bonds, it's important to discuss with your advisor what product is appropriate in your portfolio based on your goals and risk tolerance. Additionally, one creative way of supporting Israel indirectly is by making an effort to invest in companies that proudly support Israel. A helpful way to identify those companies is by researching the anti Semitic groups like BDS and see which companies they have blacklisted and recommended divesting from. You can then counteract those recommendations by making every effort to buy products from those pro Israel organizations. Three, you can also divest from companies who don't support Israel or are ambiguous about their denunciation of terrorism. I imagine many listeners do not wish to support companies who are anti Israel or are more sympathetic to the message of terrorist organizations like Hamas over a democracy like Israel. While refusing to support these businesses is the opposite of investing, redirecting your funds from causes that harm Israel to those that benefit Israel is also an important method of aligning your money with your values. And four, you can also go on a trip to Israel and spend money which will directly benefit the local economy. This is certainly the most fun option. Next time you are hesitant about the cost of vacation in Israel, just remember every shekel you spend is literally doing a mitzvah. Okay, next question. My wife and I max out our retirement account. Should we buy permanent life insurance for more tax deferred savings? The question is, do you need more life insurance coverage? The answer is no, then you should not go anywhere near permanent life insurance. Life insurance is not an efficient investment vehicle. What some people may say, but my friend at Southeastern Mutual said it's a great investment. Well, I hate to break it to you, but your friend at Southeastern Mutual is a tool. If you want to save more money, you can always put money into a taxable account. It's a very useful way to have a taxable account given the lack of restrictions on income, withdrawing funds, and other tax benefits. Most of my clients have taxable accounts invested in plain vanilla mutual funds and has served them quite well. No need to get complicated or fancy, and there is certainly no need to buy an expensive insurance policy when you don't need the coverage. Okay, I see I have a 457F plan at work. What is that? I've never heard of that before. So this is not a super common arrangement. For those who don't know, which is probably most people listening or watching this, a 457F non-qualified deferred compensation arrangement is a written agreement between the employer and each eligible highly compensated executive to pay benefits when the executive retires, dies, or becomes disabled. The agreement contains certain conditions that executives must meet before benefits are paid to them. Unlike a 403b, 401k accounts, participants can take regular withdrawals from a 457 plans as soon as they retire, regardless of whether they are reach the age of 59 and a half. These distributions are taxed as regular income, but the 10% early withdrawal penalty is never applied. A 457F plan can be a useful tool for executive compensation, but requires careful planning to maximize benefits while managing tax implications. It has higher contribution limits than typical employer retirement plans. There is a tax deferral as well. Finally, it can serve as a supplemental savings to a traditional retirement plan. The drawbacks include immediate taxation upon vesting. The employer has sole control over funding. There's a risk of forfeiture if the employee leaves before vesting. And there's super complex compliance requirements that your employer must follow. Bekitzer, if you're eligible for this type of plan, I'd strongly suggest speaking to your HR department to learn the parameters of plan. You should speak to colleagues who participate in the plan to learn from their experience. And also, as I've mentioned before, it's worthwhile speaking to your financial advisor to see if it makes sense for you. Next question. I'm going back to Baha Mar in the Bahamas for vacation. They have a bar in the middle of the pool. It's amazing. The issue is a Corona costs $13. I can't bring myself to spend that type of money for a beer, but it will spark joy in my life. Thoughts on what I should do? You should buy the beer. You can't think about it in the sense of, is this a good deal? You're already spending a boatload of money to go to a beach and water park. What difference does $13 make? Answer, it is an irrelevant rounding error. Buy the beer and enjoy life. I find the same framework applies to buying a $15 hot dog at a sporting event or a $10 soda at a movie theater. Yes, I go to the movie once every 18 months. I'm modern orthodox. What can I say? View it as part of the experience and just move on with life. If you're having trouble affording the experience in the first place and you're sweating every dollar you spend, you should probably go on a cheaper vacation. Enjoy the experience and don't forget to make a bracha on that Corona. I'm thinking about buying a Braun shaver because my barber told me it's the best shaver for my type of facial hair. I trust his expertise. My issue is that my late grandparents told me not to buy German products because of what they did to the Jews during the Holocaust. Should I buy the shaver or not? My barber told me my facial hair is like steel, and on another occasion, he told me I should go to Turkey to get hair plugs. He actually told me to get hair plugs from Turkey multiple times. And I also value his opinion, but I'll not be getting hair plugs. Anyway, I have struggled with similar predicaments my whole life. On one hand, I don't want to support the descent of Nazis, and on the other hand, Germans make good products. Some people take solace in the fact that due to globalization, every product is made up of parts from all over the world, at least until tariffs bring global commerce to a halt. You're still benefiting a German company, but you are also benefiting countless other workers and countries around the world just as much. That's one way to rationalize buying something from Nazis. The other way to argue that Germany has taken a turn and is a big supporter of Israel and cracks down on anti-Semites, unlike other countries in Europe that facilitate anti-Semitic rallies. At the end of the day, you need to do what you are comfortable with. Assuming you're living a Jewish lifestyle and passing down Torah values to your children, then that is the ultimate way of carrying on your parents' legacy. Passing down a Torah way of life is far more important than where you decide to buy your shaver. Okay, that's it for financial questions this week. And by the way, if you have a more involved personal finance situation, feel free to reach out directly to me, and perhaps my team and I can help you. The best way to get a hold of me is via email at jonathan@parkbridgewealth.com. And finally, I'd like to end with a timely and actionable idea that listeners can implement to their own financial lives. Today's timely idea is going to be for folks who want to have an impact on their money, with their money, I should say. One way to do this is by excluding exposure to countries that have a history of poor human rights. This involves foregoing broad international market exposure and instead selecting specific ETFs that invest only in countries or regions that reflect an investor's values. This may involve purchasing an international fund that excludes a country like China, which is known for its human rights abuses. This may also exclude countries like Egypt, Venezuela, South Africa, and more. Not every one of these countries is heavily represented in the typical investor's portfolio. However, for folks who are passionate about this issue, there are ways of minimizing or eliminating their exposure even further. And over the next few episodes, I'll share several more ways of being impactful with your money. And with that, it's a wrap for this week's show. Any comments or questions, feel free to reach out directly to me via email. I love hearing from my listeners. And finally, the secret to financial success is no secret at all. It's to spend less than you make, invest the difference prudently, and ignore the noise. See you next time on Jonathan on Money.